Hello, my name is Suzanne Heaton, and I'm wanting to welcome you to this session of coping during COVID naturally. I'd like to do just a few housekeeping tips so that we can make this be as beneficial a presentation for you as possible. So first, make sure that you have some water with you to keep hydrated. I have my trusty water bottle with me. Really important to keep hydrated. The second is if you have a diffuser with essential oils, have that going on. It's really, really dry right now. Anything you can do to boost the humidity in your area is awesome. Position your screen, whether you're on a phone or a tablet or a computer, position it so that you're not hunched over looking down because everyone's got that Zoom hunch going on right now. When you lean forward like that, looking at the screen, you're putting all this undue stress on your neck as well as your shoulders. So just use some books and prop your computer up if you're on a computer or a tablet so that you are looking directly at the screen and not looking down. Another thing is make sure that if you're sitting, that your back is supported properly. Sitting has been said to be the new smoking. So because we put so much pressure on our organs when we're sitting all the time. So if you can stand at times during this presentation, please do. But if you do need to sit, have a pillow in behind your back just to help support it. And as well, what you can do is you can place some pillows on your lap if you're sitting, and then just place your arms on the pillows, and then that way your shoulders can relax as well. Okay. And then have a view of nature in sight, either out your window, like I do, I'm looking out to a park across from me, or have a picture of nature that you can look at. And then finally, if you have a piece of paper and pen, or even have a Word document open, because we're going to be tracking some things as we go along in this presentation. So now that we're set up, here we go. So I am so grateful to be speaking with you today about coping during COVID naturally. You had many incredible sessions to choose from, and I feel really grateful that you chose to take in this one with me. I am a passionate advocate for promoting, connecting, and reconnecting with nature for health and well-being, because nature has so much to share with us if we just slow down, look, and listen. When you think about it, nature is the best life coach out there with over 40 billion years of experience. So she has just a bit to teach us. So I want to acknowledge that I live, work, and play in the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda Nations, as well as the Métis Nation 3, and all people who make Treaty 7 of Southern Alberta their home. I want to say a quick thank you to you, and this quote by John F. Kennedy kind of nails it. We must find time to stop and thank the people who make a difference in our lives. You have dealt with so much this year already. So thank you for being the unsung heroes out there, day in and day out, doing what you are doing for children. Thank you for being an unsung hero. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on myself to make you realize why I have this deep connection with nature. I grew up in a small farming community called Miami, Manitoba. Yes, that's right, Miami, Manitoba. And it actually was a village of just 300 people. And I grew up on our family heritage farm. It had been in our family for 3 different generations. And I had great aunts that came out for the summers to live with us, and they were master gardeners. So I learned a lot from them. My father was a teacher, he was a farmer, he was a land and soil and water conservationist. And my mother was a palliative care coordinator, and she was also an artist. So it was in this upbringing on my family farm that I learned a lot of things about nature just kind of through osmosis. After I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Manitoba and I took a degree in physical education and recreation studies. And that didn't quite get me to where I wanted to. So then I went to the University of Lethbridge and I took a degree in management and I majored in marketing. And then from there, I ended up working at Shell Canada, the oil company, and I had marketing and sales positions actually internationally. And I was working with them for 11 years. And then I had three major wake-up calls happen. Cancer, burnout, and loss. And all those wake-up calls made me realize just how short this life of ours is. And I decided to take a total leap of faith and created my own company called Motivated by Nature. And I am a real huge advocate for the healing benefits of nature and how important it is for us to reconnect, especially during this time of COVID. And I'm really, really excited that science seems to finally be catching up to what the mystics and the sages and the poets knew for centuries, and that is that nature heals naturally. So COVID has added so much on top of your plate already with everything else that you have to do, all the precautions that are in place. And I just want to let you know that COVID fatigue is a real thing, COVID brain. You have to make so many little decisions each and every day that making the big decisions for you and as well for your students seem overwhelming. So I just want you to know that that is totally natural. So COVID, on top of everything that you're currently doing for your students, you have to make sure that you're following all the protocols. So that makes it harder for you to have the connections that you want to have with each of your students. You are trying to keep the students calm and not be anxious about the situation, but you need to keep yourself calm as well, because your students will pick up automatically if you're in a dysregulation mode. You may be a little bit heightened yourself because you may be immune compromised, or you may have someone that you're looking after that is immune compromised. And there's a whole spectrum of people, some who are very lax on their protocols and some who are incredibly stringent on their protocols and very anxious about everything that's going on. If you have tested positive yourself, you may have felt a sense of shame. This is something I didn't think about, but my husband is a teacher as well. And he said that's what some of the teachers were feeling when they tested positive, because they were concerned that they had given it to their, or may have given it to their colleagues as well. So the bottom line is, with COVID, you can follow all the protocols, but you really can't predict the outcomes. So it's not a really great state to be in. Now, on top of all this, a lot of you are zoomed out. You are video conferenced to death. And don't worry, the irony is not lost on me that you're having to watch yet another interactive presentation on a Zoom platform. So I am going to do my best to make this as interactive as I can for you and to hopefully help you along the way. So one of the things that I want you to do right now is I want you to take out your pen and paper or your Word document, and on a scale of 1 to 5, I want you to rate where your stress level is at right now. A 1 is low, a 5 is high. So that's all you need to do. Just write that down. Okay. Now, I thought this meme was quite cool. Can I call you back? I'm watching a live stream. It just really hits home the importance of the need to balance nature with technology time. Now, there was a report done prior to COVID, which I found quite concerning. So it was done by BBM Canada, and they found that the average adult watches about 30 hours a week. So that works out to about 2 hours and, 4 hours and 20 minutes a day. And it doesn't stop at that, because they found that while people are watching TV, they're also on their social media platforms, on their phones, telling people what it is that they're watching. So they're getting loads and loads of screen time. And there was a study done that at that same time that children ages 5 to 16 were getting 6 hours of screen time a day. Now that was before COVID hit. Can you imagine how much screen time everyone is getting now? That's quite a lot. What's interesting is the more high tech our lives become, the more we need to get out in nature to balance it. But the exact opposite is happening. There were stats done by Ipsos and the Nature Conservancy of Canada, and 9 out of 10 people said, yeah, they know that when they get out in nature, they feel better, but it's just easier to sit on the couch. And what's interesting is I have found with COVID that families and individuals are spending more time outdoors, and I'm really hoping that that trend will continue when COVID is no longer a thing to worry about. So what we're going to do is, each of us, myself included, have become really shallow breathers. And what happens when we breathe shallow and don't breathe from our diaphragm is that we actually trigger that response in our brain, that fight or flight response in the brain, not the rest and relax. And we want to get back to that rest and relax response. So what we need to do is breathe deeply from the diaphragm. Okay, so we're going to breathe in through the nose for a count of 2 and out through the mouth for a count of 5. And as you breathe out, just imagine, you can even shake if you want. Just imagine shaking off the stress, shaking off what no longer serves you, okay? So we're going to do that. If you want as well, if you want to stand up for this, that would be great. If you're sitting down and you want to stay there, that's fine as well. But what I'd like you to do is take your hands and just put them on your stomach, right around your belly button area. And when you breathe in for that 2, imagine your belly expanding like a big balloon. And when you breathe out for 5, imagine that balloon deflating, okay? And what we're going to do is we are going to do a breathing technique with ocean waves in the background. And the thing is, the ocean waves mimic our breathing when we are at rest. So that's why it's so comforting to hear the ocean, okay? So I'm going to play the ocean waves, and we're going to breathe in for that count of 2 and breathe out for the count of 5, and shake if you want when you do the count of 5. So we're just going to do this. It's just a quick exercise. So here we go. Breathe in and then just finish. Awesome. So what I'd like you to do now is, just from that quick exercise, I want you to rate yourself on that scale of 1 to 5, 5 being really highly stressed, 1 being low in the stress level. Just see if you decreased that number at all. Okay, and you can do this exercise absolutely anywhere. And what I tell people to do is, when they're driving in traffic, when they come to a stoplight, a red stoplight, make that be your sign that I'm going to focus on my breathing. No one around you in the cars is going to know what you're doing. Just take that deep breath in and out. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a series of pictures. There was a study done in Korea that used a functional MRI to track people's activity in their amygdala. And they found that those who looked at pictures of nature had much lower stress levels than those who were looking at man-made structures. So I'm going to do a variety of pictures here, and I'm going to have us kind of engage all our senses, use our imagination and use our creativity. So not only are we going to look and use our eyes, but we're going to engage all of our senses. So the first picture here is a beautiful, beautiful scene with a beach. And I mean, wouldn't all of us wish that we were there right now? What I want you to do is take in that picture with your eyes, and then I want you to engage your other senses. What would you be hearing on this beach? Maybe that's nice ocean waves. Just imagine that. What would you be smelling? Maybe that great ocean sea salty air. Just breathe that in. What would you be tasting? Maybe a nice strawberry margarita or a daiquiri on the beach. What would you be touching? Perhaps it's the sand around you. Perhaps you're in the water. And what would you be feeling? So I want you to breathe in all of that you felt through your senses, through your nose. Breathe in for 2. And breathe out for 5. Great job. Go to the next picture. This beautiful waterfall, I want you to use all your senses. There's a roaring waterfall in front of you. Beyond seeing, what is it that you're hearing? Is it a roaring waterfall or is it just a gently falling waterfall? What are you smelling? Is it nice, clean air? Is it really nice and moist? Are you tasting anything? Are you touching anything? Perhaps it's the cave walls. And what are you feeling? I want you to breathe that all in through your nose for 2 and out through your mouth for 5. Awesome. Here's the next picture. This is a beautiful Abraham Lake in David Thompson Park. So beyond using your eyes for this picture, what would it be that you're hearing? And just to let you know, this is at Windy Point in Lake Abraham, so there might be a little bit of wind, or you may have lucked out. Maybe there today it's just a nice, quiet wind. Okay. What would you be smelling in this beach-like area? Would you be tasting anything? Maybe you've brought a picnic. Would you be touching anything? The pebbles in the sand. What would you be feeling? I want you to breathe all that in through the nose for 2 and breathe out for 5 through your mouth. Good job. The next picture is of a forest meadow or a mountain meadow side. So beyond seeing all the beautiful wildflowers, the wild-eyed brown-eyed Susans and the Indian paintbrush, and maybe there's bergamot in there as well. What would you be hearing? Would there be birds flying over? Would there be wind? What would you be smelling? Would you smell the aroma of all the incredible wildflowers? Would you be tasting anything? Would you be touching any of the grasses? And what would you be feeling? Breathe that all in. Breathe in through your nose for 2 and out through your mouth for 5. Awesome. Now, I told you I was from Miami, Manitoba, and this is quite a significant scene that I would see close to the farm, is a field full of canola. So beyond seeing the canola, what would you be hearing? Maybe it's just a small prairie breeze. What would you be smelling? Maybe it's the beautiful scent from the canola. What would you be tasting? Would you be touching anything? And what would you be feeling? Breathe that all in through the nose and out through the mouth for 5. All right, now we get to this beautiful, lush, dense forest. Use all of your senses, and beyond what you're seeing, think about what you would be hearing. Maybe there's a little babbling brook. Maybe there's a chattering squirrel. What would you be hearing? What would you be smelling? Maybe it's that moss-colored floor. Maybe it's just rained and the air is just full of that really earthy, yummy smell. Is there anything you'd be tasting? Would you be touching anything? Perhaps that really soft moss on the ground, or perhaps touching a tree. What would you be touching? And what would you be feeling? I want you to breathe that all in through your nose and out through your mouth for 5. Great job. All right, there's a couple of reasons I had you do that. I want you to grab a pen and a piece of paper or your Word document, and I want you to write down where your favorite nature place is to go. It may have been something like one of the pictures that I showed you, or it may be something totally different. There's a whole range of nature out there. There's desert, there's plains, there's wetlands, there's jungles, there's forests, there's meadows, there's glaciers. You get the idea. There's woodlands. So what is your favorite nature place to connect with? And I want you to write down, what are you seeing in your favorite nature place? What are you seeing? The next thing I want you to write down is, what are you hearing? The third thing is, what are you sensing or feeling? The fourth thing is, what are you smelling? And the fifth thing is, what are you touching? Great. Now I want you to take that deep breath in through your nose again for 2, and out through your mouth for 5. And what I'd like you to do now is, I want you to rate again where your stress level is at on that scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low, 5 being the highest. Where is your stress level at? And has it gone down since the beginning? So what I wanted to share with you is, if you can't be in your favorite place, bring that indoors. As you can see behind me, I have a plant, and I also have a picture of a meadow in a mountain range. I also am looking out into nature as well. So when you can't be out in nature, there's things that you can do to bring it in. I also have an essential oil diffuser going that really helps as well. So look at different ways that you can bring nature in when you can't get out. So what I'd like to do now is share some of the scientific studies with you. The first thing that being immersed in nature is, it decreases stress. Now, I find it really interesting because there is a difference between perceived and actual stress. And this study found that perceived stress is actually worse for creating more cortisol in the body than actual stress is. Now, I want you to think for a minute. I talked about COVID and all the things that you're dealing with, and you've dealt with a lot more, I know. Think of all the perceived stress, perhaps catching COVID, maybe your students getting COVID, maybe a loved one getting COVID, a lot of perceived stress out there. And what's really important when we have this stress, it's more important than ever to go outdoors and connect with nature, either through biking, through walking, through hiking, whatever it may be, that helps to bring the stress levels down. I wanted to share with you something called Shinrin Yoku, and it started in Japan, and it basically translates into forest bathing. And so what happened was these two researchers that lived in Tokyo wanted to see if they took participants out of the concrete jungle of Tokyo and took them out to a forest to see if their stress levels would go down. And what they did was they tested their saliva for their cortisol levels, and they found a significant drop when they took these individuals out to the forest. Now, forest bathing doesn't mean taking your clothes off and going for a swim. What it means is being very present, using all of your senses, and walking slowly and focusing on your breathing as you're going through the forest, and maybe stopping to touch a tree. That slowing down really, really helps with the stress levels and decreasing the stress. And along that line, the University of Michigan did a study as well about taking 20 minutes outdoors in nature and how it just really helps with reducing the cortisol level in your body. So this is starting to take root, and you'll probably hear a lot more about forest bathing in the future. The second thing that nature does is it decreases anxiety and depression. There was a study done by Duke University that literally found that you could walk off a bad mood. So what they did was they tracked participants who got outdoors 3 times a week for a 30-minute walk, and they found that that 30-minute walk was as effective as taking an antidepressant. That's pretty significant. Another study found that adolescents who had access to green space in their youth were 55% less likely to develop depression or anxiety when they became adults. So that's pretty important for city planners to take into account that everyone needs to have equal access to green space. There's a doctor out of Vancouver named Dr. Shimi Kang, and she is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist who also wrote the book, The Dolphin Way. But what she does is she actually prescribes to the teens that she works with that have stress and anxiety, she prescribes them to get outdoors for a 30-minute walk each and every day. Pretty cool prescription without any nasty side effects. And I wanted to share Parks, P-A-R-X, just got launched in November of 2020. It was scheduled to launch in April of 2020, but COVID kind of kiboshed that. And it's pretty amazing. It's a joint effort between doctors and BC Parks, and it's actually writing a green prescription for people. So instead of writing a prescription for drugs, it's a green prescription. And Dr. Melissa Lem, who is a family doctor, is very instrumental in this movement. And I actually reached out to Dr. Lem because after they launched this in November, there were a lot of researchers that came online saying, you know, telling individuals that they need to go out into nature when they already have high anxiety rates will just increase their anxiety. And in speaking with Dr. Lem about this, she said, the thing is, all these prescriptions are patient-centric. So they take all those into account when they're writing that nature prescription. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. There may be some individuals who need to have a buddy with them when they go out, and they are really patient-centric focused. So this is started in BC, and I look forward to this going all the way across Canada. Now, there's another doctor, Dr. Rosini, who does a talk on TED Talks on how one split second of witnessing awe takes us outside of focusing on ourselves and has us focus on the bigger picture. Now, that's really important for anxiety and depression because it makes us realize that we're part of the whole. And I'm a real advocate for watching sunrises and sunsets. Now, they are so awe-inspiring to me, and there are so many things in nature that just fill us with awe. So gift yourself the time to see that awe in nature. The third thing that nature does is it decreases ADD and ADHD symptoms. So researchers found that kids going for a 20-minute walk with ADHD actually improved their symptoms equally to if they had taken a prescription drug. That's pretty powerful. And this is something that I had never thought of. In New York City, there was an article done in the newspaper in June about COVID and how it was affecting New Yorkers, because a lot of downtown New Yorkers live in these high-rise apartments, and the parents and the kids were kind of confined to the apartment. The kids couldn't go to the playground. The playground was off zone, and the parents found that their kids were really acting up and really starting to have some aggressive behaviors. And what they found was when they went to friends or family who had green spaces for their kids to run in, their kids' moods changed considerably. So what they decided was then for their summer holidays, they were going to visit their friends and family that had green spaces just to help regulate their kids. So that was pretty amazing for me to make that correlation. The next thing that nature does is it boosts your creativity and your productivity. So when you want to be really creative, I want you to write down, where is it that you go? Where is it that you go when you really want to be creative? You just want to let things flow. Just write it down. There's no right or wrong answer. So this was a question that was posed to us when I was at Shell and I took a Franklin Covey course. And what was interesting was not one person said, I go back to my cubicle and I get really creative there. Every single participant said, I go out to a river, a stream, like somewhere in nature, a lake, the woods, the mountains, whatever it might be. And the reason that people really get juiced when they go out in nature is there are no right angles that occur in nature. Everything just flows. There's also things called fractals. Think of a fern, and they are very, very attractive to the human eye. And so by getting out in nature and seeing that, that really, really helps us get into the creative zone. And I really had this hit home when I did a watercolor class. And I was painting the trees and they looked like matchsticks. And the instructor came over and said to me, Suzanne, trees aren't straight up and down. And she was right, but I hadn't taken the time to really observe them enough. They flow back and forth. It's not just a straight up and down line. So that is why nature is so creative producing, is everything just flows. As well, in Japan, they did a study. There was an organization that was having a really tough time. and they had a problem they needed to solve. So they took one group of individuals and had them stay in the office and brainstorm what they could do about this problem. And they took another group of individuals and took them out backpacking. What happened was the group that went backpacking came back with a more creative as well as cost-effective solution. So that's pretty powerful stuff. And the color green helps to boost creativity as well. It's by looking at it for just a few mere seconds, it boosts your creativity level more than any other color. And that's all primal. That's all linked to when we were hunters and gatherers. And what's interesting to note is both Einstein and Edison went for daily walks. So I think if those geniuses did that, each of us could take a page out of their books and do that ourselves as well. Now, a doctor by the name of Liz Brewster of Lancaster University conducted research into the link between doing photography and well-being. And it showed that doing wildlife and nature photography helps people to focus, and it allows them to learn a new skill and just provides a little bit of an artistic outlet. Now, I am not a professional photographer by any stretch of the imagination, but what happened was I got intrigued and I thought, I want to do some perspective photos here. And this was when COVID was about 2 months in. And so I would take pictures from the bottom of a plant on different days and just see the different colors of the sky. And I would get lost in doing this. It was like a meditative trance almost. So I can attest to the fact that it's a beautiful outlet to just let your creativity flow. Getting in nature also improves your memory. So there was a study that was done, and these profs had 2 different groups do a memory test. And then what they did was they took these 2 different groups, and one group went for a walk in kind of a conservatory area and botanical garden, and the other group went for a walk in city streets. And they came back and they redid a memory test. And those who had been out in nature in the botanical garden scored 20% better than those who had gone for a walk in the city streets. So this is something that might be good to keep in mind with doing tests with kids. Perhaps after they've run outside, had some fresh air, schedule a test when they come back in from doing that, and just monitor it yourself and see what happens. The 6th thing that nature does is it actually increases happiness. There is a certain project called Mappiness, where these scientists used people's phone devices and they had them check in at different parts during the day. They would be randomly sent out survey questions, but it also coordinated with GPS signals. And they found that the people rated themselves the happiest when they were in green spaces. So as opposed to being in urban settings. So, and that study was done back in 2013. So that's pretty cool stuff. Now, we're going to take a break, a nature break here. You've been sitting for over half an hour. If you can stand, great. Or if you're standing right now already, awesome. But this is just a quick tongue-in-cheek little video that hopefully brings a smile and maybe even some laughter to your face. They say that laughter helps to increase the antibodies in our body by 20% that help to fight viruses and cancer. So I'm going to just share this with you, and I hope that you get a giggle or two.
Do you find yourself longing for the apocalypse? I did. I was looking for a reason to live. Hi. Are you feeling tired, irritable, stressed out? Well, you might consider nature.
From the people that brought you Getting Outside comes prescription strength Nature, a non-harmful medication shown to relieve the crippling symptoms of modern life.
Nature's recommended for humans of all ages, and it's great for pets too.
Nature can reduce cynicism, meaninglessness, anal retentiveness, and murderous rage. In clinical studies, Nature is proven to decrease work-induced catatonia.
Caution. Nature may cause you to slow down, quit your job, or seriously consider what the you're doing with your life.
If you are overly cynical, jaded, or emotionally numb, you may need to increase your dose of Nature. Do you have trouble being even mildly uncomfortable? Nature may not be right for you. Side effects may include spontaneous euphoria, taking yourself less seriously, and being in a good mood for no apparent reason.
So ask your doctor if nature is right for you.
So I hope you enjoyed that little nature break. If you stood up and want to sit back down, please feel free. So nature also helps to improve our physical health. There was a study done of those who worked out in a gym versus those who worked out outdoors. And they found that the stress levels were lower for those that worked out outdoors, as well as the blood pressure levels were lower for those that worked out outdoors as well. And wouldn't we all like to be on a beach like this right now? But when we walk in bare feet on sand or soil or grass, there are 7,000 nerve endings on the bottom of each of our feet. And what happens is we absorb all these beautiful electrons from the earth that helps to detoxify our blood. And it helps with inflammation in the body. It helps with insomnia. It even helps with heart disease. So they even say when you've gone overseas on a flight or gone to a different time zone, one of the greatest things that you can do is go out in your bare feet, and it will help to set your circadian rhythm by walking on the earth. And a cousin of mine who has plantar fasciitis finds that when she walks outside barefoot, all the differences in the soil and the earth really helps with her plantar fasciitis. The next thing that nature does is it increases our immunity. There is something called phytoncides that trees and plants give off. Now, phytoncides is just basically a big scientific term for essential oils. So think of when you go hiking in a pine forest and all of a sudden you come across a big waft of pine that is just so intoxicating. That's what phytoncides are. Now, what fascinates me about this is phytoncides are what the trees give off to fight off potential pests or bacteria or viruses. And what happens is we then breathe this in. And as we breathe it in, these phytoncides help to boost a type of white blood cell called a natural killer cell. And these natural killer cells help us to fight viruses and some types of cancer. So that is pretty powerful stuff. When we're getting out in nature, we're actually boosting our immunity. And I think that that is one thing that all of us should be doing that's absolutely free. It's right out our front door. Let's get outdoors. Let's get to boosting our immunity naturally. There is some research done on kids who play in the dirt versus those who don't and avoid the dirt. And they actually find that those who play in the dirt from a young age have much better immunity than those who avoid the dirt. And this actually has me concerned because there is so much of the antibacterial gel that's being used right now. And I am concerned for the younger generation growing up to find out whether they're actually going to be boosting their immunity or not. A friend of mine as well had a dad who was a doctor, and he was an old school doctor. And he said, you know what, every kid should eat about a tablespoon of dirt to get their immune system where it needs to be. And that gut health has been linked to our mental health. So digging in the dirt is quite a healing process. And my husband and I actually did a vegetable garden for the first time last year. And it was such a treat just having fresh, sweet carrots from the garden that tasted like they had honey drizzled on them, and beautiful fresh potatoes. Our Thanksgiving dinner was full of all this fresh stuff from our garden. It was great. But it's interesting to note that they've done research, and there's biomes in the soil, healthy biomes, that when we breathe them in, they have the same effect on us as what Prozac does without any of the negative side effects. So that's pretty powerful stuff to just digging in the dirt. And so there is some reality to, you know, that the happy gardener concept. There's some science behind that. So perhaps you need to do a garden for your school, get the kids involved in that as well, or just a garden in your home, in your backyard. The ninth thing that nature does is it lowers your chance of various diseases. There was a joint study between the Nature Conservancy and the Women's Health, and they found women who spent 3 hours per week getting outdoors and getting exercise and walking outdoors decreased their chance of getting diabetes, decreased their blood pressure levels, and decreased their chance of getting breast cancer. It's pretty powerful stuff, and it's right out your front door. The 10th thing that nature does is it decreases symptoms of various diseases. There was a neurologist and author by the name of Oliver Sacks, and he found that when he took his patients into the garden, that there was just these incredible transformations that happened that he said, I can't really explain it. All I can do is observe what I've seen. And so he said basically that there are 2 types of non-pharmaceutical therapy that helped his patients, and they were music and nature. And so he had a gentleman that had Tourette syndrome very, very badly. When he took him out to the desert, this man was so totally symptom-free from his Tourette. And that was just from being in the desert. Another example was he had a woman with Parkinson's disease who was very, very unstable. And when he took her to the garden, she started to climb on the rocks like she was a little kid. It just left him shell-shocked. And the other one was individuals with dementia. Some of them couldn't even remember how to tie their shoes together anymore. But when he took them to the garden and he gave them a seed to plant in the garden, they knew exactly what to do. And so Oliver says the following: I cannot exactly say how nature exerts its calming and organizing effects on our brains, but I have seen in my patients the restorative and healing powers of nature and gardens, even for those who are deeply disabled neurologically. He said, in many cases, gardens and nature are more powerful than any medication. He said, clearly, nature calls to something very deep in us, and that is termed biophilia. The whole idea that we're connected to nature, so when we reconnect with nature, there's that feeling of being part of the whole. The 11th thing nature does is it speeds our recovery time. A researcher by the name of Ulrich took 2 groups of people. They were people who had undergone gallbladder surgery. And one group had a view out their window of nature, while the other group had a view out their window of a brick wall. So remarkably, what Ulrich found was those who had the view out the window of nature decreased the recovery time, decreased their need for pain meds, and also had less complications than those who were looking at a brick wall. This is some powerful stuff that hospitals need to incorporate into their recovery for patients. And I just wanted to show you this picture. This is an architectural firm in Norway called Snøhetta, and I will not even try to pronounce the foundation that they've teamed up with. But what they've done is they've created a long-term care facility between two major hospitals in Norway. And this is where people go for long-term treatment. So they go to this beautiful place that is built right into nature and fits right in. But not only do they have the view out their window, right above them, there's a skylight so they can see out there if they're laying on their back, but then they can also watch the stars at night. And Snøhetta is trying to get this all throughout the world. And I would be one happy camper if something like this came to Canada. The 12th thing that nature does is it gives us better sleep. So getting outside and exposing ourselves to sunlight actually helps to trigger our circadian rhythm so that we have better sleeping patterns. Something you can do is you can wake up with the sunrise and go to sleep with the sunset. And I know in the winter months it's a little bit earlier, but one thing I will highly recommend is that, especially at night, once the sun goes down, try and turn down as many electronics as possible, because that blue light stimulates you and makes you think that you need to stay up. If you can put soft light on, like a candle even, and have that on instead of electronics, you will find it will make a difference in your sleep pattern. You can even do that first thing in the morning, because when you wake up in the morning and you have to turn on that light during these dark winter months, it's a little bit shocking to the system and it gets that fight or flight going on in your body. So if you want to light a candle first thing in the morning, just to slowly wake yourself up, that's a much nicer way to wake up instead of that abrupt light. So I'm going to play this quick video for you from when my husband and I went snowshoeing in Peter Lougheed Park at Chester Lake. And it's set to music, and I want you to focus on your breathing. Breathe in for that 2 through the nose and breathe out through the mouth for 5. Okay. And I will check in with you after you do this. So we'll play it here. Okay, excellent. Now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to rate your stress level on that same scale, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, and see how that compares to the very beginning of this presentation. I hope that it has helped your stress level to come down just a wee bit. I have only scratched the surface of all the healing capabilities of nature. I'd like to finish with this quote by Frank Lloyd Wright. Study nature, love nature, stay close to nature. It will never fail you. Thank you for your time and again for all that you do to make a difference. My hope for you is that you gift yourself some time out in nature to help decrease your stress levels during these unprecedented times. Here is to your well-being. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Stay safe and be well.